The memorial ceremony had been going on for 3 hours when Cole noticed the Arbiter watching him. The old stood at the edge of the crowd, his silver skin catching the light from the floating candles that drifted through the grand hall. Around them, representatives from 12 species bowed their heads in silence, remembering the billions who died in the war 15 years ago. Tried to focus on the ceremony. He tried to think about the dead and the peace that followed their sacrifice, but he could feel eyes on him like a weight pressing against his chest. The Arbiter had been a peacekeeper for 6,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species destroy themselves and others, and right now, he was watching with the kind of attention that made younger beings very nervous. The ceremony ended with a long note from a horn that no human instrument could match. The crowd began to scatter, diplomats returning to their quarters and soldiers returning to their posts, turned to leave, hopping to disappear into the flow of bodies moving toward the exits. Lieutenant Commander Cole, the voice was soft but it carried across the hall like it was meant only for him, stopped walking. He turned around slowly and found standing directly behind him. The Arbiter was tall, nearly 8 feet, and his face showed no expression that human eyes could read. "I would speak with you privately." Glanced around for Commander Lisa Monroe, his superior officer. She was across the hall, deep in conversation with a group of trade delegates. She would not save him from this. "Of course, Arbiter. How can I help you?" "Not here," gestured toward a corridor that led away from the main halls. "There is a matter of history I wish to discuss, your history, and perhaps mine as well." They walked in silence through the curved hallways of Harmony Station. The station had been built 3,000 years ago as neutral ground where species could meet without weapons or threats. Had been stationed here for 2 years as a military advisor, helping to coordinate human forces with the Peacekeeper patrols that kept shipping lanes safe. It was quiet work, important but boring. He had started to think nothing interesting would ever happen to him here. He was wrong. Led him to a small chamber with walls that glowed a soft blue. The room was designed for private diplomatic conversations, shielded from all forms of surveillance. When the door closed behind them, felt completely alone with the ancient being who had requested his presence. "Do you know why I asked for you specifically?" Settled into a seat that adjusted to fit his tall frame, remained standing. "No, Arbiter. I assumed it was because I am the ranking human military officer currently on station." "That is part of it." His voice remained calm and even. "But there is another reason. I have read your service record. I have studied your career. You are a man who values truth, Lieutenant Commander. You have turned down 3 promotions because accepting them would have required you to lie about matters you considered important." Felt his stomach tighten. Those decisions had been private, classified even. "I try to serve with honor, Arbiter." "Honor" made a sound that might have been a laugh. A word that means different things to different species. To the honor meant dying rather than retreating. It made them terrible enemies. "Tell me, what does honor mean to humans?" "It means keeping your word, protecting those who cannot protect themselves, and telling the truth even when it hurts." "Even when it hurts," leaned forward slightly. "Then I have a question for you, Lieutenant Commander, and I ask it not as an arbiter speaking to a soldier, but as one being who values truth speaking to another. Waited. What truly started the war?" The question hit like a physical blow. He kept his face still through years of training, but inside his mind was racing. How much did the Arbiter know? How much had he guessed? And most importantly, what was authorized to tell him? "The official history states that they attacked human colony ships without warning or provocation," said carefully. 3 ships destroyed, 8,000 civilians killed. Humanity responded with force, and our allies joined us. The war lasted 4 years and ended when the home fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Skate. "I know the official history." His tone did not change, but something in his posture shifted. "I helped write parts of it, but I have recently discovered inconsistencies that trouble me deeply. Communication records that do not match, ship movements that make no strategic sense, and most troubling of all, economic transfers between the consortium of Myra and certain human officials in the months before the first attack." Said nothing. "Your species arrived in our galaxy only decades before the war began. You were new and strange, and you frightened many who had grown comfortable with the old order. They had been isolationists for centuries. They wanted nothing to do with galactic politics, and yet somehow, these 2 species who had never met managed to stumble into a war that killed billions." Silver eyes held gaze. I do not believe in coincidence, Lieutenant Commander. Not on that scale. Training told him to deny everything, to stick to the official story and report this conversation to his superiors immediately. But his conscience, the same conscience that had cost him 3 promotions, told him something else entirely. Why are you asking me this, Arbiter? Why now after 15 years? Because I am old and I am tired of comfortable lies. Because the dead deserve better than false history. And because I believe something is happening again, right now, to another species who will suffer as the Inhumans suffered. I cannot stop it if I do not understand how it happened before. Closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about Admiral Gregory, who died trying to expose the truth. He thought about Ambassador Carol, whose ship was destroyed before she could reach the Council. He thought about the billions of graves spread across 7 star systems, human and alike. What I am about to tell you, Arbiter, has been classified since before I was born. Pulled a chair close and sat down across from. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. But you deserve the truth. We all do. Maybe it is finally time for someone to speak it. Nodded slowly. Then speak, Lieutenant Commander, I am listening. Took a deep breath and began to tell the story that had been buried for 30 years. Began with the truth that had been hidden longest. Our first contact with the happened 5 years before official records indicate. It was not violent. It was not hostile. It was simply 2 ships meeting in empty space, far from any claimed territory. Listened without interruption as described the scene from recovered logs. The human exploration vessel Wandering Star had been mapping a region near the galactic rim when they encountered a scout ship. Both crews were cautious but curious. They exchanged basic greetings through translation software that barely worked. They shared coordinates of their home systems as a gesture of openness. Admiral Gregory was the commander of that first mission, continued. He was a careful man. He understood that first impressions between species could shape centuries of relations. He ordered his crew to show only respect and friendliness. They responded in kind. This contradicts everything in the historical archive, said quietly. I know, the true records were hidden because they made certain powerful groups look very bad. Pulled a small data device from his pocket. 3 years ago, Director Marsh authorized me to carry these files. She believed a day would come when they needed to be shared. I think that day is today. He activated the device, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed communication logs, financial transfers, and ship movement records dating back 30 years. After the first contact, Admiral returned to human space and reported to the assembly. Most leaders were excited about meeting a new species, but not everyone. The consortium of Myra had been the dominant trading power in this region for 2,000 years. They controlled shipping routes, resource extraction, and banking systems across dozens of worlds. Humanity's arrival had already cut into their profits. Another new species could threaten them further. Pointed to a series of financial records. Within 6 months of our first contact, the consortium began transferring enormous sums to intelligence operations in both human and space, not through official channels, through hidden accounts and secret agents. What were they buying? Asked. Lies. Switched the display to show intercepted communications. They fed false intelligence to the suggesting that humans planned to colonize their sacred breeding worlds. They showed fake military deployments and fabricated weapon tests. They made it look like humanity was preparing for conquest. And what did they tell your people? The same kind of lies in reverse. Our intelligence services received reports that they were massing their fleet for an unprovoked attack, that they saw humanity as a threat to be eliminated, that they had already selected targets among our colony worlds. Studied the communications carefully. Both species were told the other was preparing for war. Yes, and both species began preparing in response. Fear created more fear. Military buildups on both sides made the false intelligence seem more believable. It became a cycle that fed itself. Changed the display again. This time it showed a personnel file with Admiral's image. Figured it out. He had maintained secret contact with a commander he met during first contact. They compared notes and realized the intelligence both sides were receiving made no sense. They had never threatened human colonies. Humans had never planned to take worlds. Someone was lying to both of them. What happened to him? He was killed. His voice grew heavy. His shuttle exploded during a routine transfer between stations. Official cause was listed as engine failure, but recovered debris showed traces of a consortium-manufactured explosive compound. Made a low sound that could not interpret. They murdered him to keep him silent. He was not the only one. Ambassador Carroll was the diplomatic lead assigned to establish formal relations with the. After his death, she obtained evidence of the consortium's manipulation. She tried to reach the council directly to share what she knew. Her ship was destroyed 2 days into the journey. The attack was blamed on raiders. But it was not the. No, it was a consortium privateer using stolen weapons. We found the wreckage years later during a salvage operation. The ship's black box recorded everything. The attackers were not. They were not even alien. They were hired mercenaries working for consortium interests. Shut off the display. The room felt smaller now, darker somehow. 1 week after Ambassador's death, the received false evidence that humans had destroyed a diplomatic vessel carrying their own peace delegation. Evidence we now know was fabricated by consortium agents. 3 days later, warships attacked the colony ships at Vega Outpost. 8,000 humans died, and the war began. Sat in silence for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. The war that killed billions was manufactured for profit. Not just profit, shook his head slowly. Control. The consortium wanted humanity and the fighting each other. 2 young, aggressive species destroying themselves while the old powers maintained their grip on galactic trade. Every ship we built for war was a ship we did not build for commerce. Every resource we spent on weapons was a resource we did not spend competing with consortium markets. And they were broken by the war. Their fleet was shattered. Their economy collapsed. They became exactly what the consortium wanted, weak, isolated, and dependent on consortium trade agreements just to survive. Rose from his seat and walked to the wall, placing one silver hand against the smooth surface. I have maintained peace in this galaxy for 6,000 years. I have stopped wars and prevented conflicts, and believed that truth and justice guided our civilization. And now you tell me that the greatest war in recent history was a lie from beginning to end. I am sorry, Arbiter. Do not apologize. Turn back to face him. You did not create this lie, but tell me, why did your people hide this truth? If you knew what really happened, why did you stay silent for so long? Met the Arbiter's gaze directly. Because we were afraid. Afraid that revealing the truth would shatter the peace we had finally achieved. Afraid that the victims' descendants would demand vengeance. Afraid that new wars would follow old revelations. And now, why speak now after all these years? Because the consortium is doing it again. Stood and walked to stand beside the ancient Peacekeeper. There is a new species called the Hollow. They achieved last year. They are making first contact with galactic civilization right now. And our intelligence services have detected the same patterns. False reports, manufactured evidence, economic pressure. Someone is trying to start another war. Silver eyes widened, history repeating itself. Unless we stop it, unless the truth finally comes to light and everyone understands how this game is played. His voice grew firm. We stayed silent to protect peace, Arbiter, but our silence is now enabling the same crime to happen again. I cannot live with that. I do not think you can either. Before could respond, the chamber door chimed with an urgent alert. Someone was demanding entry. The door chimed again, more insistent this time. Looked at, who raised one silver hand in a gesture that meant patience. The Arbiter activated a small screen on the wall that showed the corridor outside. A consortium trade minister stood at the door, his blue robes marking him as a high official. Behind him stood 2 security officers in consortium colors. Sorelvex said quietly. He arrived on station 3 days ago for trade negotiations. Interesting timing. Do you think he knows what we are discussing? I think the consortium has informants everywhere, and I think our conversation has already begun spreading through channels I cannot control. Deactivated the screen. We will deal with him soon, but first tell me how your people discovered this truth. You said it was hidden for decades. What changed? Returned to his seat, keeping one eye on the door. 12 years ago, a human archaeological team was surveying an abandoned consortium outpost in the sector. The station had been destroyed during a corporate conflict centuries earlier. No one expected to find anything valuable. But they found something. They found a sealed vault containing backup communications from the era before the war. The consortium had been thorough about destroying evidence in their active systems, but they forgot about this abandoned outpost. The archaeologists recovered intact records of the entire operation. Payment transfers to the mercenaries who killed Admiral, orders for the attack on Ambassador's ship, fabricated intelligence reports designed to push both species toward war. Nodded slowly, proof beyond question. Complete proof. Names, dates, amounts, orders. Everything needed to prove the consortium manufactured the war from beginning to end. And yet you buried it. Felt the weight of those words. Yes, we buried it. Director Marsh's predecessor made the decision. He argued that revealing the truth would destabilize galactic politics. The consortium had reformed by then. New leadership had taken over. The old criminals were either dead or retired. What purpose would justice serve except to reopen wounds? What purpose indeed? His voice held an edge that had not been there before. You chose comfortable silence over justice. Tell me, Lieutenant Commander, is this human wisdom or human cowardice? Had asked himself that question 1,000 times. Neither, Arbiter. It was fear, pure and simple fear. Fear that the survivors would demand vengeance against the consortium. Fear that our own people would demand we pursue war crimes trials across half the galaxy. Fear that the peace we had paid so much to achieve would crumble under the weight of truth. Fear, spoke the word like he was tasting something bitter. I have seen fear justify terrible things across 6,000 years. It is the excuse of those who lack courage. You are not wrong. Did not try to defend the decision. But I was a junior officer when this choice was made. I learned the truth only 3 years ago when Director Marsh took over and began questioning the old policies. She believes the cover-up was a mistake. She believes truth delayed is not truth preserved but truth poisoned. The door chimed again. This time they could hear Sorrelvex's voice through the barrier, demanding entry under diplomatic protocols. He is frightened, observed. A frightened enemy is dangerous but also careless. What changed Director Marsh's mind about revealing the truth? The Hollow pulled up another display showing a star map with a small cluster of systems highlighted in green. They achieved 8 months ago. Their home world is located between 3 major power blocks including the consortium. Within weeks of their first voyage beyond their own system, our intelligence services began detecting familiar patterns. The same manipulation that preceded your war. Exactly the same. False reports being fed to Hollow leadership suggesting that nearby species are hostile. Fabricated evidence of military buildups. Economic pressure designed to isolate them from potential allies. Someone is using the same playbook that worked 30 years ago. Studied the map. The consortium's old guard. The ones who escaped justice when the truth was buried. Many of them are still alive, still wealthy, still connected. They lost power when the consortium reformed, but they never stopped working to regain it. Director Marsh believes they see the Hollow as an opportunity. A new war would create chaos. Chaos creates opportunity. If they can manipulate the Hollow into conflict with established powers, they can profit from both sides while everyone else bleeds. And so your director authorized you to reveal the truth, not from guilt alone, but to prevent the same crime from happening again. Yes, shut off the display. We could not save the billions who died in our war. The dead are dead. No amount of truth can bring them back. But maybe by speaking now, we can save the billions who would die if the Hollow are dragged into the same trap. A message appeared on the chamber's communication screen. Recognized the sender code as belonging to his aide, Lieutenant Corinne Bell. The message was brief, station buzzing with rumors. Minister Sorrelvex demanding emergency session with Arbiter. Commander Monroe asking for your location. What should I tell her? Typed a quick response. Tell her I am with Arbiter discussing matters of historical importance. I will contact her when I am able. Your superior will not be pleased, observed. Commander Monroe has been waiting for this moment longer than I have. She knows more than she pretends. Most human officials on this station do. Paused. We have been carrying this secret like a weight around our necks. I think many of us are relieved to finally set it down. The door chimed a third time. Sorrelvex's voice came through clearly now, sharp with anger and fear. Arbiter, I invoke diplomatic emergency protocols. You are required to grant me audience immediately. There are serious allegations being spread that damage consortium reputation. I demand the opportunity to respond. Looked at, are you prepared for what comes next? Once I open that door, there is no returning to silence. I have been prepared for 3 years, Arbiter. Director Marsh chose me for this assignment because she knew I would not hesitate when the moment came. Because you value truth even when it hurts. Because I have seen what happens when good people stay silent. Admiral tried to speak and died for it. Ambassador tried to speak and died for it. Someone has to finish what they started. Someone has to speak the words they were killed for trying to say. Walked to the door. Before he opened it, he turned back to one final time. You humans are a strange species, so young and yet so willing to carry burdens that older civilizations avoid. I have watched you for decades and I still do not fully understand you. We do not always understand ourselves, Arbiter, but we try to do what is right, even when it takes us far too long to find the courage. Press the release and the door slid open. Sorelvex stood in the corridor, his blue robe swirling as he pushed past the guards and into the chamber. His eyes found immediately and something flickered in them. Recognition, perhaps, or fear. What lies have you been telling the Arbiter, human? Sorelvex demanded. What fabrications are you spreading to damage the consortium's good name? Stood his ground and met the minister's gaze without flinching. No lies, minister, only truths that have been buried for far too long. Would you like to hear them? I suspect some will sound very familiar to you. Sorelvex moved into the chamber like a storm approaching land. His guards tried to follow but raised one silver hand and they stopped at the threshold. The Arbiter's authority on Harmony Station was absolute. Even consortium security knew better than to challenge it. This is outrageous, Sorelvex declared. His voice echoed off the blue walls. I have received reports that classified human intelligence is being shared without proper authorization, that wild accusations are being made against the consortium based on fabricated evidence. I demand to know what is happening in this chamber. Remained calm. Years of training had prepared him for moments like this. What is happening, Minister, is a conversation about history, specifically the true history of the war. Would you like to join us? The war ended 15 years ago. Its history is settled, documented, accepted by the entire assembly. Sorelvex turned to, Arbiter, surely you recognize this for what it is, human manipulation, an attempt to shift blame for their own aggression onto innocent parties. I have reviewed evidence that suggests otherwise, replied. His tone gave nothing away. Lieutenant Commander Cole has presented communications records, financial transfers, and operational orders that paint a very different picture than the official history. Fabrications, clever forgeries designed to deceive. Sorelvex waved his hand dismissively. The consortium has enemies who would love to see us weakened. This is clearly a coordinated attack on our reputation. The chamber door chimed again. Checked the external display, and his expression shifted in a way could not read. The Arbiter opened the door without asking permission from either party already present. A figure entered that made his breath catch in his throat. She was, her scaled skin a deep bronze color that marked her as an elder. Her eyes were golden and ancient, and filled with something that looked like exhausted sadness. She wore the formal robes of a high council representative. Elder said with genuine surprise, the Confederacy has refused direct contact with humans since the war ended. Your presence here is unexpected. Many things are changing today, Arbiter. Elder's voice was rough, like stones grinding together. Her eyes moved from to Sorelvex. When they landed on the consortium minister, they hardened. I intercepted communications about this meeting, about the evidence being discussed. I came to add our voice to the conversation. This is highly irregular, Sorelvex protested. Whatever claims are being made should be reviewed through proper diplomatic channels, not in a private chamber with representatives who have obvious reasons to attack the consortium. Obvious reasons. Elder stepped closer to the minister. Despite her age, she moved with the controlled grace of a warrior. Yes, we have reasons. Billions of reasons buried across 7 star systems, but those are not why I am here today. She reached into her robes and a data crystal. I am here because the Confederacy has carried the same secret that the humans are now revealing. We have known the truth for decades. We discovered similar evidence during our own investigations after the war ended. Felt something loosen in his chest. He had hoped this moment might come but had not dared to believe it. You knew. We knew, placed the crystal on the table between them. Our historians recovered records from a consortium trading station that was captured during the war. They contained communications proving that the attack on our diplomatic vessel was staged, that the humans had not destroyed our peace delegation, that we had been tricked into starting a war against an innocent species. Sorovex's face had gone pale. This is conspiracy, coordinated deception between species who both have reason to deflect their own guilt. We were silent because we had no choice, turned to face the minister directly. After the war, the Confederacy was broken. Our economy was shattered. Our fleet was dust. The consortium offered us reconstruction loans at terms we could not refuse. They made it clear that any attempt to reveal the truth would result in those loans being called in immediately. We would have faced complete collapse. Economic blackmail, said quietly. They threatened to destroy what little we had left unless we kept our mouths shut. His voice cracked with old anger. So we stayed silent. We pretended to accept the official history. We taught our children that their parents and grandparents died fighting human aggression when we knew it was all a lie. The chamber fell silent, looked at the elder and saw his own guilt reflected in her golden eyes. They had both carried this weight. They had both stayed quiet when they should have spoken. They had both failed the dead in the name of protecting the living. Captain Holt appeared in the doorway, leading a squad of human security officers. Lieutenant Commander Cole, I received orders to secure this chamber. What is happening here? History Captain gestured for him to enter. Old secrets finally being spoken. Please secure the exits and ensure no one leaves until Arbiter gives permission. Sorovex moved toward the door. I have diplomatic immunity. You cannot hold me against my will. You have immunity from prosecution, corrected. Not immunity from questions, not immunity from truth. You will remain until I am satisfied that I understand what has happened here. This is kidnapping. The consortium will not tolerate this treatment of a senior minister. The consortium will do whatever the assembly decides it must do. A new voice joined the conversation. Council Speaker Myra, the highest authority on the station, entered the chamber. Her silver skin was darker than marking her as younger by several centuries, but her authority was unmistakable. I have monitored this conversation from my office. The evidence presented is compelling enough to warrant an immediate assembly-wide tribunal. Sorovex looked like a creature caught in a trap. His eyes darted between the exits, calculating odds that were clearly not in his favor. The consortium's current leadership has already been contacted, Myra continued. They are distancing themselves from the actions of their predecessors as we speak. Several former officials are being detained for questioning. You, Minister, will remain on this station until your own involvement has been determined. Captain Holt stepped forward. Minister Sorovex, please surrender any weapons or communication devices. You are being held for questioning under Peacekeeper authority. For a moment, thought the minister might resist. His hand moved toward his belt where a small device was clipped. But then Elder stepped between them, her golden eyes locked on the consortium official. I lost 3 children in your manufactured war, she said softly. 3 children who died believing they were protecting their people from human invaders. They died as heroes fighting a threat that never existed. If you reach for that device, I will end you myself and gladly face whatever consequences follow. Sorovex's hand dropped to his side. Captain Holt moved in and secured him without further resistance. Myra addressed the room. Lieutenant Commander Cole, Elder, you will both be asked to provide formal testimony before the full assembly. The tribunal will convene within 3 days. Can you prepare your evidence by then? We have been preparing for years, replied. We were simply waiting for someone to ask. Elder turned to face him. Her expression was difficult to read, but something in her posture had shifted. She extended one clawed hand toward him in a gesture he recognized from human customs. Perhaps it is time our species stopped being enemies, she said. Perhaps it is time we face the future together instead of trapped by a past built on lies. Grasped her hand firmly. Her scales were warm and rough against his palm. I would like that very much, Elder. I think the dead would like it too. 3 months had passed since that day in the Blue Chamber. Cole stood in the Grand Assembly Hall, looking out at representatives from 12 species gathered in the largest diplomatic space in known civilization. The curved walls rose hundreds of feet overhead, decorated with symbols from every member world. Floating platforms carried delegates to their positions in a vast sphere of seats surrounding the central speaking floor. The tribunal had reviewed all evidence. Testimony had been given by hundreds of witnesses. Records had been authenticated by independent experts from neutral species. The truth was now beyond question. waited on the speaking floor beside Elder. They had spent the last 3 months working together, comparing evidence and preparing testimony. The hatred their species had carried for 15 years had slowly transformed into something unexpected. Not friendship exactly, but understanding, recognition, the knowledge that they had both been tools used by others for purposes neither had chosen. Arbiter rose from his position on the judicial platform. The ancient moved slowly, but his voice carried across the entire hall without amplification. This tribunal has completed its investigation into the origins of the war. The evidence is clear. The war was manufactured through deliberate manipulation by elements within the consortium of Myra. False intelligence was fed to both human and leadership. Key officials who discovered the truth were assassinated. Economic pressure was used to ensure silence after the war ended. The hall was utterly quiet. Representatives who had lived through the war sat motionless, absorbing words that changed everything they thought they knew. Several former consortium officials have been indicted for crimes against sentient beings. Some have already died of natural causes. Others will face trial before this assembly. The current consortium leadership has formally acknowledged the crimes of their predecessors and offered reparations to affected parties. Paused and looked directly at, and standing together on the floor below. However, the assembly remains divided on how to proceed. Some demand full reparations. Others argue that reopening old wounds serves no purpose. Before we vote on this matter, I would hear once more from the beings who brought this truth to light. He gestured to Lieutenant Commander Cole. You represent the species that first chose to break the silence. This tribunal has asked you a question that I believe deserves a public answer. Why did humanity hide this truth for so long? And why reveal it now? Stepped forward to the central speaking position. He could feel thousands of eyes on him from every direction. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady when he spoke. Arbiter, fellow representatives, I will not pretend that humanity's choices have been wise or brave. We discovered the truth 12 years ago and we buried it. We told ourselves that silence served peace. We convinced ourselves that disturbing the past would only create new conflicts. We were afraid. He paused and let the word hang in the air. We were afraid that justice would lead to vengeance. That vengeance would lead to war. That war would kill more billions and make the original tragedy even more meaningless. So we stayed quiet. We maintained comfortable lies because uncomfortable truths seemed too dangerous to speak. Turned slowly, making eye contact with delegates from species he recognized, and some he did not. I'm not here to defend that choice. I'm here to explain why we finally changed our minds. He pointed toward a viewing screen showing a small blue ship currently docked at the station. That vessel carries representatives of the Hollow. They achieved 8 months ago. They are new to this galaxy, just as humanity was new 30 years ago, and our intelligence services detected the same patterns being used against them. The screen shifted to show intercepted communications, false reports, fabricated evidence, economic pressure. Someone was trying to start another war. The same tactics, the same manipulation, the same hands behind the curtain pulling strings. If we had remained silent, the Hollow would have become the next victims. Another manufactured conflict, another mountain of graves built on lies. His voice grew stronger. We revealed the truth not because it was convenient or safe. We revealed it because silence had become complicity. Every day we said nothing was a day we helped the criminals who murdered our own people escape justice. Every day we pretended the official history was real was a day we honored lies instead of the dead. He stepped back slightly and gestured to Elder. She moved to stand beside him, her bronze scales catching the light from above. We could not save the billions who died in our war. Nothing can bring them back. Nothing can restore the years lost to hatred and grief. But maybe, by speaking now, we could save the billions who would die if history repeated itself. Spoke next, her rough voice carrying across the hall. The Confederacy has announced that we are ending our isolation. We will work alongside humanity to mentor the Hollow and protect them from the manipulation we both suffered. Former enemies standing together to ensure that what was done to us is never done again. Nodded slowly. And what would you have this assembly do, Lieutenant Commander? What outcome do you seek from this tribunal? Considered the question carefully before answering. I do not seek vengeance, Arbiter. The dead cannot be avenged. I do not seek reparations, though affected families deserve whatever support can ease their pain. What I seek is something both simpler and harder than either of those things." He looked up at the ancient. "I seek a promise, a commitment from every species in this hall that we will never again allow truth to be buried for convenience, that we will never again choose comfortable lies over uncomfortable honesty, that when the next young species reaches for the stars, they will find mentors who speak plainly instead of manipulators who deal in shadows." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held something that might have been emotion. "You ask us to choose truth even when it hurts. I ask us to remember that peace built on lies is just a longer path to war." His voice filled the hall. "Lies protected the criminals who started our conflict. Lies maintained their power and let them escape justice. Lies nearly enabled them to destroy another innocent species. If we want real peace, lasting peace, we must build it on foundations that cannot be corrupted." Council Speaker Myra rose from her position. "The Assembly will now vote on the proposed Transparency Accord. This agreement would require all first contact situations to be monitored by neutral peacekeepers and would establish protocols for independent verification of intelligence that might lead to military action." The vote took only moments. 11 species voted in favor. Only the consortium abstained, though their representative noted that the current leadership supported the accord in principle and would implement its provisions voluntarily. Afterward, and walked together through the station's observation deck. Through the vast windows, they could see the hollow diplomatic vessel completing its docking procedures. The small blue ship looked fragile against the massive bulk of Harmony Station. "Do you think we can truly change things?" asked. Her golden eyes reflected the stars beyond the glass. "I think we already have." Watched as the hollow ship's airlock opened and figures in environmental suits began making their way toward the station. "The question is whether we keep choosing truth even when it hurts, whether we have the courage to speak when speaking is difficult." "My people have a saying," voice was soft. "The path of honor is paved with painful steps. I never understood it until today." "Humans have a similar one. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your species has a gift for stating obvious things as if they were profound wisdom. We also have a gift for eventually doing the right thing," smiled slightly, "usually after we have tried everything else first." They watched together as the hollow delegation crossed the threshold into the station. Waiting to greet them were representatives from both humanity and the Confederacy. Former enemies standing side by side, ready to guide a new species through the dangers that had nearly destroyed them both. "Welcome to the galaxy," murmured, too quietly for anyone but to hear. "We made terrible mistakes, but we learned from them, and we will do everything in our power to make sure you never have to learn the same lessons the hard way." The hollow delegation disappeared into the welcoming crowd. Above them the stars burned on, indifferent to the small dramas of mortal species. But in the hall below something had changed. Something had shifted. Truth had been spoken, and for the first time in 30 years, the future looked a little brighter than the past.